Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Flashbacks. Today I'll be taking you through a review of Batman Haunted Knight, written by Jeff Loeb, drawn by Tim Sale. We got a great book tonight. Let's get into it. So, these are all from Legends of the Dark Knight, which is an imprint from, I believe, the late 80s, early 90s. You got really great collections going around, and this one collects a bunch of Halloween stories. So this is Batman in July. Well, Halloween in July, rather. So Batman Haunted Knight is broken into three different parts. We have chapter 1, Fears, chapter 2, Madness, and chapter 3, Ghosts. And all of these are pretty interesting in and of themselves, but 3 is really interesting because it plays off of another story a whole lot. We'll get there. My goal in this being the third episode, is to cut these reviews down shorter and shorter each time. I'm trying to get them to around 15 or 20 minutes each. So starting out with chapter 1 in Fears, we get a lot of cool villains in this book, and I gotta stop right there. I gotta say something about the art here. The writing is great. Jeff Loeb, it sometimes is hit and miss, but a lot of these Batman Legend of the Dark Knight are really just, genius. And like the art that Sale does here is just really incredible. Like I love all the art. I cannot knock it. It's really old school. Like you get Batman with the glowing red eyes. You get a lot of cool Batman drawings, like silhouettes and things of that nature. But you also get to see a plethora of villains that you don't always get to see in some of the newer books. Everybody wants to see Batman fight Joker or Bane for some reason. Whatever. Like right here you get there's really technically no Joker in this book, which is something I absolutely loved about this entire collection here. But you get, on the first story, Fears, well, who do you think you get? You get Scarecrow. And Scarecrow is at his, you know, Scarecrow best. You get a full splash page with Crane and the mask and the hat. Classic Scarecrow is what you're getting here. And when I first opened the book, I immediately, threw my money down on the table. Like, take all my money. I want this book. I think I actually only paid about $10 for it. Maybe a little less at my local comic book store. Remember to always support your local comic book store if you can. So let's get into Fears. As far as reviews go, like I said, all the art is amazing. I'm gonna try and stay away from saying that over and over again, but again, the art is really cool. You get Batman beating on some thugs. He's looking for Crane. Of course, they're working for Crane. They're more afraid of Crane than him, which is, seriously a mistake. Batman basically tosses this guy out a window. He talks. Of course he talks. They always talk when Batman gets to the interrogation. But you get Batman facing down Crane, and he manages to get a hold of him and hand him off to the police. Then we get Batman. You see that he hasn't slept for a couple of days, and he ends up going to back to Wayne Manor, and there's actually a party tonight, and so of course Bruce Wayne has to attend, so he doesn't get to sleep. Batman at this point is 3-4 days without sleep, I believe, and you notice he's noticed himself getting really tired. Being out of it, making mistakes, things of that nature. So we move on. We get Batman at the party, well, Bruce Wayne at the party, rather, and he meets somebody that he doesn't know. Of course, he knows all of his guests. He invited them all. He knows everything about them. He even keeps tabs on them. because that's the kind of friend Bruce Wayne is. So he meets this lady. She is intriguing and intelligent. Uh, she's got her dogs running all over Wayne Manor, and Alfred shows up with a bag of kibble. Alfred is in top form in this entire book. Like if you pick up Batman Haunted Knight, this entire series, if you read it for nothing but Alfred's quips, you would have gotten a good story alone. But I digress. Batman is intrigued by the woman, of course. The dogs are intrigued with Batman's clock. If you know anything about Batman, you know what's behind that clock. So we move on. We see that Scarecrow has, of course, escaped from the police in their paddy wagon. He managed to sneak some of his Scarecrow toxin into the paddy wagon, and he releases it by pulling one of the. Well, you know what? I'm gonna let you discover that. He releases it somehow, and yeah, you get Halloween in July. Basically, cops freak out. They crash the paddy wagon. Scarecrow escapes. Batman is not happy later. He suits up that night without again having slept and goes out to stop some thugs from robbing a store on his patrol. And, well, he gets cut. He berates himself, and we continue on from there. He gets back to the house, and of course, he had to leave the party early to go and deal with Scarecrow. Turns out, Miss Red, the femme fatale, is still there. She calls herself Julian Maxwell, by the way. So, of course, she smuggles her way into Bruce Wayne's room. Bruce, who is resting from getting home that night after being Batman again after leaving the party, is surprised that she was able to get past Alfred. Alfred assures him it will not happen again, of course. We just get a lot of great art. We get the cityscape. We get Batman flashing back to the next night. Of course, he hadn't got any sleep. And he thinks on his father and him having to leave all the time. His father being a doctor. For those of you who don't know Batman's origin story or background for whatever reason. We get him thinking on his father and things of that nature, and Batman is distracted. Of course, because he hasn't had much sleep, he's distracted by the femme fatale, Miss Maxwell. He ended up having breakfast with her against his better judgment, and it's the reason why he ended up not getting any sleep that night before. They end up going on a date. They encounter an interesting situation which Bruce could handle, but chooses not to because it's only money, and of course it would out his identity. Again, I'm gonna let you guys discover that if you do decide to pick up this particular collection of books. Later on that night, Batman is attacked by some crows, and they rip his costume, and they end up taking it back to Crane, and Crane is, of course, smart enough to know that they probably got followed by Batman, which they did. Batman crashes through the roof, and he lets Crane know he's got two choices: easy or hard. Of course, Crane, being the nutcase that he is, chooses hard. He runs off into a maze, the Gotham Central Park maze, which had been closed. Turns out that this was all part of the plan, of course, and Scarecrow coated the maze, the thorns in the maze with his fear toxin. So Batman's costume all torn to shreds already, ends up taking the brunt of this, and he ends up getting a lot of fear toxin in his blood. He manages to get home to Alfred, who is actually running a background check on Miss Maxwell. More on that later. And unfortunately, he discovers the answer right as the Batmobile pulls up. And Bruce ended up in some sort of toxic shock because of the Scarecrow poison. Alfred, of course, administers first aid to his cuts and abrasions, and it also administers the antidote to Crane's fear toxin. But it seems it was so much of a high dose, Batman is still experiencing the effects later on in the story, well into the rest of the day. If you've been paying attention, you know this is probably the first sleep that Bruce has had in ages, and it is fitful. He has dreams of running through a maze, of getting married, of things missed. About everything that you can imagine, he sees. Batman is having a really bad time. We skip forward to the next night, and well, the bat signal's out, but Miss Maxwell has managed to worm her way back into Wayne Manor, and Bruce decides not to go out. Interesting. So we move on, and we see the GCPD, and we see Gordon with the bat signal, and Scarecrow shows up to the bat signal and poisons Jim. Unfortunately, knocks him out with some of his fear toxin, and well, that's that. Gordon's missing now. Now we get back to Bruce, and unfortunately, Alfred is forced to give him not so much forced. Alfred is remiss, but he gives him the information that he's found on Miss Maxwell. More on that later. Bruce is, of course, upset about this. Alfred, of course, offers his resignation, as he always does, but it's Alfred's job to protect him, especially when he doesn't protect himself. So Bruce wakes up more from the dream that he had been in. As the toxin begins to leave his blood, as he begins to see reason, he comes back to himself and understands what's going on. Again, more on that in just a moment. We get Batman at the bat signal, and it's been altered a bit. The background color changed, eyes added. It looks more like a jack-o'-lantern, so of course you know it's the calling card of Crane himself, Scarecrow. We get Batman with his bat glider swooping down to pull Jim out of this precarious situation at the clock tower. Scarecrow has Jim sitting on one of the hand keys of the clock tower, and you gotta give Jim his credit. He's not freaking out as much as he could be. Batman swoops in, grabs him, gets him to safety, and then goes back for Crane. At this point, Bats is really PO'd. He goes after Scarecrow hard. Scarecrow the entire time has been going through these different nursery rhymes. Little Boy Blue, Come Blow Your Horn, blah blah blah, etc. and so on. Batman at this point has definitely had enough. He tells him it's not a game, and then he beats on Victor Crane. He beats the absolute crap out of Scarecrow. He's mad at Scarecrow because, well, he's been terrorizing the city. He's caused countless injuries and possibly a few deaths here and there. He kidnapped Gordon. His fear toxin got into Batman's head and messed with him. Almost made him give up being Batman because he's about to run away with might have gave away a tiny bit too much. Again, you might want to pick up the book if you want to know exactly what happened. But anywho, these are never supposed to be a 1-to-1. We get back to Wayne Manor, and basically Alfred is giving Miss Maxwell the boot. And there are quotes around Miss Maxwell. Again, if you want to know exactly what's going on there, we get a great ending to this. You're gonna have to pick it up. Eventually, she gets a note, and in the middle, there's a word. But in the middle of what, you ask? Well, in the middle of a bat-shaped drawing, she gets one word. It's really good. You guys are gonna have to pick that up if you want to see for yourself. So moving on, we move on into the second chapter here. The second chapter being Madness, and I wonder who we're gonna get this time. Who represents madness in these haunted stories in this Halloween in July, you ask? Well, you get no other than the Mad Hatter himself. Again, we have the villain having these nursery rhyme, lines. With Tetch, it starts with, and excuse me, the Mad Hatter, Jarvis Tetch, if you're unfamiliar. He starts with Twinkle Twinkle Little Bat. How I wonder where you're at, upper world, the world you fly. Like, well, you get the picture. Tetch is, again, one of the more interesting Batman villains. And if you don't know, his whole thing is, mind control. We get there eventually. So we get Tetch running from Batman. We also get the scene that introduces Babs. In this version, and some of the later versions, you know her to be Batgirl eventually. Red hair, glasses, Gordon's daughter. Well, here she's more or less adopted, if I remember correct. Basically, Jim is her uncle. So you get her introduction here. And she gets to experience a piece of Gotham right off the bat, with Batman chasing Tetch across this train that she and Gordon were waiting for. Hatter is just his nuttiest here. Like, I absolutely enjoy it. You see him freak out when he sees this great big picture of the Queen of Hearts. He, of course, pulls a sword and tries to slice off Batman's head. He misses, cuts Batman's arm. Batman is trying to be easy, go easy on him, but it ends up costing him. He shoots Batman in the head, mind you, and Batman takes a tumble. So we get Gordon having a bit of a tiff with Babs, and she wants to go out on the town, have fun, do the things a teenager wants to do. Gordon is trying to tell her that this ain't that kind of city. You don't want to go out there. The things I've seen. She disagrees because, of course, she's a teenager. And you know where that leads. She sneaks out. Meanwhile, Batman is incapacitated and having a dream about his mother. The gunshot wound to the head and the fall will do that to you. And again, Batman dreams of, well, the night. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know which night that is. And in this earlier version of Batman's adventures, we've got him, well, his mother reading to him The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland. So, of course, Mad Hatter, Jarvis Tetch has a serious obsession with Wonderland. And you get a couple good details, one of which I'm going to give you for free because it's such a good one. They read the story, it's raining, and of course, The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland is perfect for when it's raining. So you get Bruce and his mother enjoying a moment reading the story, and they're gonna head out to the movies later to see The Mask of Zorro. Bruce actually insists that she wears the pearls because it's a special night for him. Or rather, the pearls are for a special night, and Bruce basically convinces her by saying, well, we can make this night special. It doesn't have to just be a movie. It's really cute. It's a good moment. But, of course, you know exactly what that leads to if you know anything about Batman. So, I'll leave the rest to you. Batman awakens from his fall, finally. With the word mother on his lips. And yeah, it's a good moment. It's a really good moment. Again, Sale crushed it with the art here, but we're gonna move on. So we get Barbara out in, or Barbara or Babs, as I've been calling her throughout the recording. You get her out on the town, and she just basically wanted to go for a walk, and she's out in Gotham Central Park, more or less. And of course, she gets sequestered by two jerks in a mask with knives who are there to cut her up and steal from her and whatnot. She manages to leap off a bridge, well, off of I say bridge, but it's more of an overhang, get down low, and of course there are more guys waiting for her down there. And then somebody opens up with a gun. Blam, 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 blam. Give you two guesses who it is. It's not Gordon. This guy is shorter and he's wearing a hat. So basically, his psychosis, Jarvis's, or rather Mad Hatter, if you must, well, his psychosis convinces him that Barbara or Babs is Alice. So he kidnaps her for his insane little tea party. Batman, wherever he woke up at, well, it actually happens to be Crime Alley. Go figure. So Bats passes out in the arms, supposedly, of this woman. And we get, for some reason, in the middle of this Tales of the Dark Knight, I believe what is another recreation of Pieta. And Google that if you're not sure what it is. This picture is, I don't know, homage so many times in different stories. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I see it a lot. You've seen it in the same thing in Daredevil. You've seen the same thing in, I don't know how many Batman stories now. Like this is probably just the fifth one I've seen it in, but I know there are a lot more instances where you see that particular painting recreated in the comic book, but I digress. We move on from Crime Alley and Batman being passed out, and we get to Jarvis's weird tea party. And he's kidnapped a bunch of people, and he's, of course, got them freaked out. And basically, the mock hare manages to, the one dressed as the hare manages to get away and out into the street. And where he's picked up by the cops, specifically Gordon. Now, the woman who managed to pick up Batman actually wasn't uh, a ghost or a night walker. It was Leslie Tompkins. And if you know anything about Batman's history, you know she's an important figure in the mythos. I won't get too deep into it. They go over a deeper explanation in the book. Again, not supposed to be a one-to-one. Really like her character, especially here. She's usually trying to help Bruce, but you know how Bruce is when it comes to help, if you know anything about Batman. She patches him up as far as she's able to without removing his mask. And Batman summons the Batmobile and continues his quest to start the Mad Hatter. So we get Gordon, who's positively identified the people in the house, what gunmen are there that the Mad Hatter is using to keep up his insane little tea party. And he also realized that the description of Alice fits Barbara Babs. So he's ready to go in with his guys and the SWAT team when Batman pulls up and tells him to pull back his men. And Batman goes in. He takes out the goons. And he's got Jarvis, but Jarvis has this barbed wire garrote around Alice, quote unquote, Bab's neck, and he is ready to do some serious damage. That thing looks absolutely nasty. Again, gotta compliment Sale on the art here. It's really dope. So we move on from there. We get Batman in a, basically he's in a bad situation. He's too far to grab Jarvis before he does a lot of real damage. So Gordon comes through the window behind Jarvis and scares him off. He takes off and he refers to Batman as the Jabberwock, which is of course interesting. Very funny. Love that. Batman dispatches Jarvis with a bit of flair. Well, actually, you could say with a bit of flair. You could say it was not with a bit of flair, but I love it. He bats the gun out of his hand and he bashes Jarvis's head into the freaking mirror. It's actually pretty dope. Takes him out completely. He's like, enough of this madness. Like, Batman, of course, is in another state of, let's say, anger, because he's had another one of his memories perverted by one of these psychotic villains that he faces day in and day out. And let's not say this guy, let's say Disturbed. And he is done at this point, more or less. So we get a cute moment where Babs, dressed as Alice, is apologizing to Batman. And Batman is more or less like, you know, he does his disappearing act. And she kind of gets that maybe the one she needs to be apologizing to is Gordon. She actually calls him Dad there, which is interesting because there's a whole back and forth there earlier in the book where they are having a moment. And so they get to have this nice moment at the end, and Batman goes home, and it's raining, and for the first time in a long time, he picks up a good rainy day book, sits down to read it. Really good story there. Very good ending. We move on to the last story, and this is definitely the weirdest story in the collection. I actually believe it's the shortest as well. And you get another interesting villain from Batman's pantheon. You get, well, first off, chapter 3 is Ghost, and you get immediately Bruce Wayne at a cocktail party for the rich and wealthy of Gotham. You get excuse me, not Scarecrow. Nah, I'm still thinking about the first story. You get Penguin, and I'm like, wait a minute. So wait, we got wait. First we get Scarecrow, then we get the Mad Hatter, and now we get Penguin. What? But whatever. Penguin is at his most Penguin-esque when Tim Sale is drawing him, and again, not to harp all over the arts, but it's great. It's great. Penguin is menacing. I wouldn't say terrifying, but he's definitely menacing. I really dig the art just on this last story with Penguin. Anywho, the first thing he does is come through a window, interrupt this party. Bruce immediately takes command. He tells everybody to get down, and Penguin, of course, takes offense to that. Says a hero, and basically blasts Bruce Wayne out of a window. Oh no, you say, but again, about a minute and a half later, basically, Batman swings through the window, so nothing happened to Bruce. Just took the opportunity of getting thrown out of the window to change into Batman. They don't go over it. They don't show exactly how he does it. I don't mind that because it's always cool to see Bruce Wayne go out of a window conveniently and Batman to come in through another one. It's always great. Moving on. You get this epic showdown from Penguin, between Penguin and Batman, and Penguin, and after of course collecting the loot that he managed to pilfer off of these rich socialites, dives out the window. And Penguin's got a jetpack. Yeah, you think to yourself, wait, he doesn't have a helicopter? No, he doesn't have a helicopter. He has a jetpack. The Penguin flies. Is the text there. Which is pretty funny in and of itself. Again, Pingy is looking really, really beastie here. And he's thinking he's going to get away with it. Batman's like, no, you're not going anywhere. He manages to get a line around his leg, and while he's going for a ride, tie him to one of the statues, the mini gargoyles, and in and around Gotham, apparently. So Pinky is hanging there. Batman collects the loot and basically goes home. And he's having a moment because, he's tired, of course, because he spends all his nights being Batman and all his days being Bruce Wayne. He's busy, busy, busy. And he starts having, well, once he lays down, he starts having this weird dream. He's visited by his father, who is covered in chains. You're like, wait a minute. That's it? With the Penguin? Now we're back to Wayne Manor and he's visited by a ghost? His dad in chains? What? And of course, by now I'm like super confused too. I'm like, he didn't get hit by any Crane fear toxin. It's not like poison ivy got to him or anything. It's not like the Penguin hit him with anything. He's having this dream that very much mimics another famous story. Give it a second as we go on, because what other famous story do you know where a rich guy is visited by 3 ghosts? What? One of them is in chains. Well, it was 4 ghosts and then 3 more. It's odd. Like let's continue on. So we get of course Bruce is not having any of this. He's dreaming and he sees this ghost of his father covered in chains. And The clock strikes, and the clock strikes midnight, and he's sure he's dreaming. He has a fever for some reason, and he gets visited by the ghost or spirit of, in the guise of poison ivy. And of course, Bruce's first thought is, you poisoned me, somehow you got to me, etc. and so on. Unfortunately, that is not what's going on here. And I say unfortunately because I again, this is probably the weirdest of the stories. Like, and that's saying something with Scarecrow and the Mad Hatter being the main villains in those first and second stories. We move on, and well, she takes Bruce to a memory of his past. You know where this is going by now, right? And you get Bruce dressed as Zorro, about to go out to trick or treat. And you find out Bruce grew up a lonely life. He didn't really have a lot of friends. Anywho, you get that his dad is busy doing something or another. And Bruce is very unhappy about this. He promised to take him out trick or treating. We get his mother trying to comfort him. And of course, after that, we get transported to another scene in Bruce's life. This time, we have a young Lucius Fox who was at the party. They were reconnecting when the Penguin made his entrance. Let's call it that. And we get Lucius in, I believe, Paris. And this guy, well, he's getting mugged by two guys. He's in Paris and he's getting mugged by two guys. And we get this guy come out of the shadows out of nowhere and beat the crap out of these guys. He's dressed in all black. He's wearing a skull cap. And he is proficient. He knocks out all three of these guys with, laser-like precision. And gives Lucius back what they took from him, a silver medallion that was given to him by his father. So they sit down, they talk. Bruce actually tells him who he is. And he's trying to figure out why this, rich kid is in Paris beating the crap out of people, basically bumming it around, beating the crap out of bad guys and things of that nature. Lucius tries to convince him that that he works in finance, that the meeting could be fortuitous for both of them because he wants to he's a philanthropist. He's trying to get a couple rich people together in order to help the less fortunate. And Bruce tells him that the money is committed elsewhere, just like he is. And if you know anything about Bruce, he's already thinking about Batman and how much that's going to cost to do, etc. and so on. So we move on from that scene in Poison Ivy into back to Wayne Manor, supposedly. And we get Bruce Wayne and then Batman in costume. And in his study, we get, insane laughter. So you know who the next ghost chose to impersonate. It's the Joker. But it's not really the Joker, it's just the ghost of the Joker. So you get a couple of words. We get a scene between him and the Joker technically fighting. Basically, the ghost is giving him context. He's transported outside, and we see the kids outside of Wayne Manor dressed up to to for Halloween, and they're thinking about, well, they're trying to build up the courage to go up to Wayne Manor and ring the doorbell and do the whole trick or treat thing. But of course, they're scared off because Wayne Manor does look terrifying from the bottom of that hill, and they swear out to it the place is haunted. This is going somewhere, I promise you. It doesn't get any less strange, but it's going somewhere. So you get the Joker again, blah blah blah. You tell him he's telling him what the Joker is usually telling him in his head, that he's nuts. Did you see those kids' faces, etc., and so on. And then we get the clock striking, I believe, 2 at this point, and the Joker is gone, replaced by the Grim Reaper. He grabs him, he takes him outside of Wayne Manor again, over to the graveyard, and of course he pulls back the hood and reveals that he is Death, dressed as Batman. Have you guessed what story this is yet? Well, if you haven't, then you've never seen A Christmas Carol. This is, I guess, a Halloween Carol. We get Bruce having the epiphany, figuring out what's going on, and knowing that this memory is for these memories were coming about to help him affect change within himself. What change, you ask? Well, let's hold on a second. Let's get to the next morning first. Batman, of course, has the conversation with the spirit. Then he wakes up. He asks what day is it to Alfred, which is interesting. And well, we get to see that it's only been a single night, and that he's been having these visions because the Penguin was captured by Batman the night before. Anywho, we get Bruce Wayne running all around Wayne Manor, making sure everything is as it's supposed to be, because of course he just had a moment. And then we get back to, well, Bruce actually decides to have that meeting that he was supposed to have with Lucius Fox, and they're talking about the creation of the Wayne Foundation. The Wayne Foundation to help the less fortunate. And at that point, Bruce also returns Lucius' medallion, which was again given to him by his father. He reveals that here, actually. And yeah, basically, Bruce was having an epiphany about what to do with the money, and that's the whole thing about his dad coming to visit him in the night with the chains of Marley rattling about. It's an interesting take if you like seeing A Christmas Carol redone. But yeah, we get a Halloween Carol there at the end, and that's the only thing I can think to call it, because I mean that's exactly what it is. And thus ends the collection of Batman Halloween stories, Batman Haunted Night. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. It's an excellent collection of books. If you can find it for about $5 or $10, you definitely wouldn't have spent too much on it. You get 3 very interesting stories, 2 of which involve major villains you don't get to see all the time anymore. You get Scarecrow, you get Mad Hatter, you get the introduction of Babs or Barbara, eventually to become Batgirl. And then you get Batman, A Halloween Carol. All in all, I'll say I'll rate this collection out of 10. I would definitely rate it a solid 7. It was a good read. The art is amazing. That story at the end is just interesting. If I was gonna rate it out of 5, I would rate it. I would definitely rate it a solid 3.5 to 4 because again, the writing is good, but what really attracted me to this, and I will not lie, is not so much the writing, but more so the art. I just love Tim Sale's depiction of Batman in his Rogues Gallery. So definitely check it out if you're looking for a good book to read. Getting closer to Halloween here. I decided to give you guys a little Halloween in July, do something different. Of course, it had to be a Batman book because, you know, who doesn't love Batman? And I had this book sitting on the shelf for a while. I've been wanting to read it for the last couple of months and just kept putting it off. Like, well, I'm going to do this book, I'm going to do that book. But Batman Haunted Knight, really great collection of stories. If you haven't checked out any of the old school Legends of the Dark Knight, you really should. There are some solid stories there that I plan to do later on as well in review. And if you pick this book up for nothing but the art, you would have definitely gotten a great deal. Three very interesting, unique tales that you probably won't see today. I'm Parker, the comic recluse. It's been fun. Let's do it again sometime. Until then, peace.